Hey, Jonathan,
Hey, Keith.
what you got going on?
Well, I wanted to share a use case from my work today and the relationships data source.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I follow your work from a distance, so I look forward to seeing it a little bit more up close.
Yeah. So this is a particular use case that I presented at the Tableau Healthcare User Group a few weeks back. And I thought with us, we could go through that and go into more detail
Okay.
on that. Yep.
Nice.
So to just set the stage on this, I got a few slides from the presentation here. And just to talk about my work, I work for a non-governmental organization called PATH. And we're involved in public health in the developing world. So we do vaccine development, drug development, medical device development, and we'll work with ministries of health and other partners to get that into the field. And naturally, we use Tableau as part of that. And we've got about 1,400 staff working on 250 odd projects in 70 different countries, plus assorted global work that we do. And with that, in this analysis that we did on bid and proposal data, I just want to talk about kind of how it came about and how we got there. So the first thing I want to center on is, so we're a mission-driven nonprofit, and there's the populations of people, primarily women and children, that we are serving. And then we will at PATH partner with other NGOs, and particularly the ministries of health or departments of health in the different countries that we work with to meet those people's needs. And the work that we do is primarily funded by grantors like there's the U.S. Agency for International Development. There's similar organizations in Japan and the United Kingdom and Canada and so on. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is a major donor, and those. And with different grants, we'll have these requests for proposal, which might be anywhere from a few days of work. So on some of the really big ones, it can be person months of work. And so we had this analysis we were requested to do, my colleague Emily and I, where we wanted to look at several years worth of data generated by multiple processes and systems that had changed over time and ask a number of different questions of that.
So like a look back at how did this whole grant or RFP process go? But it sounds like also the data was coming from different places because it was sort of multi-year and had evolved in its shape and structure and source over time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So we had a number of questions that we were starting out with this analysis. So one of them was, where does this bid and proposal money go? Because this is overhead money. And as a nonprofit, we want to be really responsible with that money. And then these kind of myths that are out there of people saying, well, we invest resources into opportunities we don't win. Is that true or not? Or how true is that? Or we could keep pursuing funders that we don't win. Or we're investing too much in smaller opportunities when we should be going after larger awards.
So much better to be looking at the facts and not just sort of making up these stories when they might or might not exist.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
So we're looking at it as kind of a little bit of myth busting potentially, or a better understanding of the reality.
Maybe validating.
Yep. And everybody who's going through a sales process in some way or marketing process has this going on. So with that, to pull this off, here's the data source.
Wow.
That we built. So lots and lots of relationships across Salesforce, business world. Some of the data was hand entered. Ultimately, it was all in either Microsoft SQL Server or Exasol as databases.
Okay.
So it already had some structure and was ready to connect to. And given the questions that were being asked and a lot of nebulous kinds of things and having to explore the data, relationships were super helpful because we had all these different grains of data. So our opportunity table that we were starting with of these grant opportunities, we had kind of a one-to-many on whether not all of our grants had bid and proposal money assigned to them, because not all of them needed that. Then we had one-to-many on this historical table of opportunities, and then lots of other relationships going on.
I see in your nomenclature there, you've got like 1 to 0 or many.
Yes.
Is that what the 0 plus means? So it means
Yep.
like, whereas on the opportunities, it's 1 to many. So there's at least a 1 to 1, maybe many.
Mm-hmm.
But on the actuals, it could be that there isn't any relationship at all. That's your syntax.
Yep. And then
Okay.
when it comes to the awards, for example, not all of our opportunities become awards.
Got it.
We don't win everything that we pursue. And so there's a 0 or 1 to 0 or many. And sometimes we get awards that don't have opportunities.
This is the reason for the relationships feature, right? Like to
Mhm.
bring together disparate data sources like this that go together, but they don't go together. They aren't all at the same
Mhm.
grain. Sometimes things are missing. Yeah.
And we built this out over the course of a few days of going at this. And when I look back at this data set, it was one of those things where if I was coming at it from a traditional building a data source for Tableau kind of way before relationships, it would have taken me days or weeks to build this out. And instead we were able to do it in a matter of hours. So this huge win for this. And with this thing of, I put this little icon on here because I love the noodle and what it let us do.
Yeah, nice. Love it. Yeah, I mean, totally, right? Can you imagine doing this with static joins where all the measures are duplicating and the level of detail of the rigid data source is getting exploded and confounding, and then needing to compensate for all of that manually with level of detail expressions?
Yep. Yeah. So we have several thousand opportunities in our data set. And I was kind of going through, okay, if I built this, what would that multiplication be if I didn't try to do anything? And I started pushing like 100 billion records or something, just crazy.
Wow. So
data.
like from a couple of thousand, from the thousands to the hundreds of billions as a result of all those joins.
Yeah, if I try to do it with straight joins. So I would have had to like pre-aggregate or keep separate data sources and do filtering. I'm waving my hands because it was just way too much, and relationships made it really possible. So as we were doing that, we built out tons of crosstabs and exploratory views and kind of landed on these simpler views for presentation, because this was one of the first times this data was all being put together in this way for our audience. So going with a simpler view. And I just want to share one of them here. I've fuzzed out all the details. So we have a bunch of different measures here in our columns, and our rows are those award amounts. So the size of that expected award amount, and we've binned them out. And then on the colors here, the way to look at the colors is lighter means lower and darker means a higher value. And, you know, in a number of cases, higher is better than not necessarily. And so one of the stories we're talking about is we spend too much on small awards. So if we look at those small awards between like $0 and $1 million, this is where it's the darkest section where we actually have our highest win rate. And it's also where we spend the least amount of money in terms of BNP, that bid and proposal money. So this myth of we spend too much on smaller awards is kind of sort of busted here, and then the conversation is able to change.
Because we're not investing a ton into them, and we're winning a lot of them. So who says that it's not worth the effort?
Exactly. And or is there, or it can start getting, the conversation can start getting to specifics, like what is that win rate that we really care about? or what is an exact amount of spend that we want to do and not more than that, and so on.
Mm-hmm. And now that you've standardized this data set, can you kind of define that metric and keep track of that KPI over time? Is that the outcome?
Well, this was one of the things that for me was an interest in building out this data source, was that I was kind of in a like, let's see how far I can take relationships and make this go. Mm-hmm. And I was able to do the whole thing with relationships. So it's an extract that's refreshed every night now.
Nice.
And I didn't have to build a whole data pipeline and
right. So you don't need some kind of Alteryx flow or some kind of Tableau prep flow. You could just take the raw data native as it's coming from its originating sources, and then do all of the integration in relationships alone, so that the only data prep stage that you need is to refresh the extract every night, and that's it.
Yep.
Super.
And a certain amount of cleanup of the data with calculated fields and so on.
Yeah, some calculations in there.
It was not perfect, and there's ad hoc groups and different things going on. But didn't have to go outside that Tableau desktop, Tableau
that
server
container
ecosystem.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
So awesome thing for relationships, being able to do that. And then in kind of thinking about where's that win for a Tableau project, just to kind of wrap up at this level, and then I want to do a deeper dive on a couple of other pieces. I found sometimes it's a gorgeous or eye-catching view. This is not an eye-catching view in any way. It's a highlight table. But being able to put all these disparate data sources into a single view to be able to answer questions faster. So to go from something that would take days or weeks to build to something that took hours to build, and then have that drag and drop in Tableau to work with it. And then being able to take our analysis in different directions with it, or even take this and start answering even deeper questions about it. Were just all wins enabled by relationships as a feature.
Cool. I would say eye-catching is true here, not in the highlight table, but in that this is data integrated in a way that nobody's ever seen before. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things that really occurs when you get your stakeholders and your audience sort of on the edge of their seat, and they kind of want to push you out of the way to get to what you're showing, is because you're pulling back the curtain on something that has never been possible before. And that in itself is very eye-catching, even if it's just a highlight table.
Yep. Oh. So with that, having done it, I want to talk a little bit more about what a few different things about this, and switch over to Tableau and actually demo them. Okay. So one of the challenges in building this was we didn't need all the data from every logical table in this case. So to just switch over to the data source here in Tableau, it's like, here's our opportunities data. And here's this actuals and budgets data, which is this ginormous source with multiple years of budgets, different budget types in it as well, which are not part of what we care about here. Mm-hmm. So to get this to work, right now there's no logical table filtering in relationships. So I went to custom SQL, and down here, there's assorted where clauses to be like for activity type and the year and the budget version and so on. Mm-hmm. So a little challenge with the relationships right now. I know Tableau's working on it, but no idea.
What is the challenge exactly? I didn't catch. What's the sticking point?
So the sticking point here is there are many millions of records in this data source. Yep. Or in this logical table, but we only need this tiny little subset of them. Mm-hmm. And if I'm having Tableau, in this case, I'm using extracts.
Got it. You can't put the extract filter on just that one logical table. It's an extract filter across the entire data source. Is that it?
Yep. I haven't worked enough with extract filters yet to totally understand them, but as far as my understanding is that they still kind of work like data source filters in that they're going to go across everything. That one of the things that Tableau decided to do with data source filters in the context of relationships is that if I click this add filters button, that's a data source filter,
Mhm.
is the data source filters really do apply to everything that we can relate. So
To
you're
the data
always
source.
joining across all the tables to get to those data source filters.
Mhm.
And I've made the assumption that extract filters are the same, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Got it. So the feature request here would be able to have a per logical table extract filter so that you could ignore all that other stuff you didn't need. And so instead, in order to work around that, what you've done is use some custom SQL.
Custom SQL. Yep.
Okay.
And it's a similar thing with this opportunities table, is that this one has, this actually is a historical table of opportunities. So it's got many, many records for opportunities data. And I just give me the latest one. I don't care about the rest of it. So there's an inner join on a select max data as of date to get that to work. So this is
nevertheless, that's very creative to be using those inner joins in your SQL to do the filtering that you want. And you could be doing other pre-processing steps, but it was kind of your design principle to just have the extract run, stay inside of the Tableau desktop ecosystem, and that's the reason you're taking this approach.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah. So then another piece in this is that in building out something like this with validating relationships, we've got to go back and forth. So in the data window here is where we configure our relationships, but then I can't really see, I can click on a logical table and look at what's in that logical table and click the update down button, but I can't see that connection between them. So I have to go into a worksheet and then start dragging out fields on this. So I'm just going to use these Salesforce IDs in here from this. So there's these Salesforce IDs, and there's 3566 here. And then if I look at my VSF opportunity table, and I have my opportunity ID here, and I drag that out, and I add all the members,
it pairs down.
This down here is 3565. Because I've just have a dimension only visualization, I'm getting an inner join effect. And I need to drag out some measures.
Then you bring out the measure from either side, see what would the left join look like, see what the right join would look like, see what the full outer would look like.
Yep. So that rearrange fields, so I can see I've got 3 opportunities out of this VSF opportunity table that don't exist in this table. And then there's one that doesn't go the other way, and I can just rearrange the dimensions here to see that one and potentially explore that. So there's this going back and forth to validate. That slows things down a little bit, but it's doable. And then the other piece here is I've found in building out views like this, we really need to start renaming and hiding fields and organizing fields right away to start avoiding confusion. So to go back to my Tableau view here.
Totally, because I don't want to have like 3 different opportunity IDs in the data. I want to have my one opportunity ID that comes from my anchor logical table, and then hide all the rest and tidy up the names and be super groomed about the data source, not just for others, but for myself.
Yes. And it's something that with, I find here is like, if I start, this is one of the things with being able to build these data sources where I never would have attempted this because of that join explosion that would have happened. But with relationships, we can do it. And now I have hundreds and hundreds of fields.
Yeah, too many
in this data source. And I've built out a few of these now. And it was like after the first one, I'm like, I've got way too many fields going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I need to just start building in that discipline to do that bit of managing and governing, curating.
Yeah,
great.
And
work.
so what I'm picking up from you is the importance of doing that early. right? So I remember when I was cutting my Alteryx teeth, somebody had written a blog post about the importance of dropping unused fields from your workflow upstream early. As soon as you don't need that field anymore, like drop it from the stream at that juncture, instead of carrying all of these records through the entire workflow to drop them at the end. And I'm just drawing a little parallel here in this workflow of you kind of crafting this new data source from scratch. Now you've got these hundreds of fields. We want to be pruning back and getting rid of the stuff that's not relevant early in the process.
Yep. I couldn't say it any better than that. So to just kind of to wrap up and tie a bow on this, so my process for working with these sources where we've got a lot of logical tables in them is add one at a time, validate that that table is doing what we expected to do, because we might have joins or we might have had 3 different tables called opportunity. Did we connect to the right one? Then we're going to validate that relationship is working as expected, and then do that renaming and hiding and organizing of fields right away that we just talked about. And also with folders, if we're using folders within Tableau, start putting fields into folders right away, so you don't end up with fields from like 5 different logical tables all in one. So to just kind of demonstrate that for people. So I have all these fields here, which are at least are organized by logical table. If I say group by folder here on this version of the data source,
I've been doing this more and more. And I couldn't agree with you more that the importance of being tidy with your folders and tucking everything in the place where you want it to be is super useful. Just tidiness in general across the board, and folders are a big help.
And then rinse and repeat for each additional logical table.
Right. And through that process, you're kind of going back and forth to the worksheet, validating, rearranging the dimensions and the measures on the canvas to confirm what's happening, going back to the relationship, if needed, adjusting the noodle, and then add the next logical table and do the next thing again.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. I love that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your process.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. See you next time.
All right. Ciao.
Bye-bye.